since 2022. At the beginning, I wasn't very successful, but I always say Rome was not built within a day. It takes time to get there. But I think you all attending this workshop, you set the right foundation, and you can only get better with time and with practice. And I'm very excited to see what Andrew what kind of tips and tricks he can share with you. I think it's yeah, I'm equally excited.
Thank you, Abna. Thank you for the introduction. Maybe I would actually cook Nigerian jollof and put it in my bag so that you
you will not get disappointed when you come to Ghana for ETHAccra.
No problem. Thank you, Abna. So, Andrew, are you ready for us?
Yes. Yeah, I am ready for you.
Thank you. I can hear you clearly now. Good evening, GMGM.
Good evening, GMGM to you too. Great to have you here. So, in order to kick off, I do know you guys had some questions, actually. I had planned to do some sort of presentation to kickstart, but given that this meeting is only for an hour, with the number of questions that I saw on the document you shared, I think I could try to tackle it in an async format. Right, so we could start with maybe exploring some of the QAs and then look at various frameworks you can use to design ideas, come up with stuff, and know how to work or build in a hackathon, right? But first off, can you please do me a favor? One sec, please. Okay, great. I need to confirm if I can share my screen. Okay. I think I can share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we could see it a minute ago, but I think you stopped sharing.
Okay, 1 second. Let me try again, please. Oops. Oh, screen. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to first of all highlight a popular framework you can use to brainstorm ideas, and it's usually the design thinking framework. However, one of my favorite versions of this framework is the one from the folks at IBM. I think it's one of the most straightforward to the point version of the what you call it. I think it's one of the most straightforward version of the framework that can help you brainstorm on ideas, think through it, and go. And I'll try to do a quick fast track rundown of it for anyone, so we can just move on. There are 3 core principles that would guide you in the design thinking framework. I would share this link here in the chat, so if anybody wants to follow through, they can click to see. And the principles are focusing on user outcomes, restless reinvention, and working in a diverse empowered team. The beauty of the framework is that it's designed for you to work in a team, right? So, and it gives you a solid foundation so you can understand the users, you understand the problem you're trying to solve, and you understand the market and the stakeholders. And that's the called design thinking loop. There are three loops. It's observe, reflect, and make. You can say ORM, which is pretty much just an acronym for observe, reflect, and make. You start by observing different problem spaces, understand the user outcomes, the user pain points. You reflect on those pain points. And when you reflect on those pain points, you extract needs analysis, and you extract pains and, something called analysis into B scenario. And once you have this, you pretty much have an idea, and you can take that to create a solution statement. Because one of the things most hackers fail at is articulating the product that they created, right? This framework takes it from first principles so that you have a way to describe what problem your product solves, why it's important to the market, and who you're solving it for. Currently, as per the people who already sponsor this hackathon, you already have a list of stakeholders. There's a key part of this entire part called the stakeholders or the sponsor users, right? So when you have your core loop, observe ORM, which is observe, reflect, and make, you have the keys. The first key is your heels. The heels are statements of intent written as meaningful user outcomes. They tell you where to go and how to get there. And then you have the playbacks. The playbacks bring the stakeholders into the loop, which is why I love the IBM version of design thinking, because it actually takes the stakeholder as the first class citizen. And the key to any hackathon is treating your sponsor as a first class citizen. The ideas winning a hackathon, if we're being honest, is not much about you, but more about your stakeholders. Now, I can frame it easily for you. If I were an organization, let's call me Stella. Stella. We call me Stella. I was an organization. One of the things we wanted to do, we had a roadmap, and there are various innovation standpoints in our roadmap. The thing is, as an organization, if we are constrained for resources, we only have 100 employees. There's only so much 100 employees can do. So when we sponsor a hackathon, what are we trying to do? We are trying to actually see what a reflection of any of the key points in our roadmap, any of the ideas we've explored, any of the ideas we've tweeted about, we've written in articles, any of the problems we are keen on, is essentially taken as a problem statement and reflected as the solution during the hackathon within 3 days, right? So stakeholders are key because they focus on the user outcomes, and then the playbacks bring your stakeholders into the loop in a safe space to tell the stories and exchange feedback, so you understand if they love it. However, unlike traditional design thinking, the hackathon, the only time you ever get your stakeholders in the loop is during the judging process, and the judging process will tell you whether yes, there is an alignment or there is a misalignment. Sponsor users are the final bits. They're the people who would use your products. The real world users that would regularly contribute, their expertise because they work in that space, they feel the pain, they've already built something along. They could be your advisors, they could be your mentor, they could be a startup founder that has already built in your space. These are the individuals you want to put in your sponsor user bracket. So the heels, the keys that align you, the heels, statements that describe meaningful user outcomes, playbacks that bring your stakeholders into the loop, and sponsor users, which are like real world users who would give you insights, whether they use your product, whether they are partners of your product, whether they are founders or advisors who have worked in your space. And so once you do that, you have the design thinking toolkit. There are so many toolkits, but I would like to focus on some of the most important ones that you need. So the most important aspect of the toolkit you would need for this part is the assess scenario. Your assess scenario, your empathy map, your need statements, your stakeholder map. although stakeholder map isn't really big. You can do assumptions and questions, but you can easily skip that into a prioritization grid. Since I've shared the link, you can go over it. And when you do your prioritization grid and user stories, you can do like idea generation, right? This is an entire scientific process that takes you from, I don't know shit, I don't know anything, to now I have like 10 different ideas I can work on with my team. Not because there was full bias about the idea, but because you had gone through the foundational process of understanding how great ideas are made. Yes, great. The link has been shared. Great. So now it's scientific. I tell you, I can promise you that if you go through the thinking process, you generally most likely would always come up with good ideas. Always. And then you can test the ideas, but this is usually the hacker section of testing ideas, because you go from idea to prototype and you actually like build the entire thing. And you gather user feedback, but you don't need to get to this point, because really a hackathon usually ends at the test your ideas phase. So you usually just need to do a couple of this. If you're going to use AI in your product, you can explore the AI essentials, which is, intent, data, understanding, reasoning, and knowledge. But if you're not building something if you're building core blockchain stuff, you can always do synthesize the research. You can then plan your work and get a prioritization grid, and then you can generate new ideas. And I can give you a quick rundown of how you can approach each one of these, right? Usually you always want to start with the assist scenario. If you have your stakeholder, yes, you pretty much want to understand what are my users currently doing. You first of all start, you start by defining current state of the art problems, the current user's experience. However, so first, when you do this, you always need to first of all frame the problem. So the thing is, you need to go out and say, what are current problems that exist today? So a quick example would be to think of it in a way that you, let's pick a stakeholder, right? And say, our stakeholder is base. You go to the news, you go to ChatGPT and tell me research base and tell me their roadmap for 2025 and some of the things the top stakeholders at base have tweeted about or talked about. Problems they want base to solve, people they want base to reach, some ideas they like, and then you just get a list, a bunch of all of it. So they could be like, at base, we want to adopt stable coins, or at base, we want a lot of mini apps, or at base, we want people and communities to feel safer. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, you create a list of problems they have outlined, ideas they've outlined, and you map out what is called an assist scenario. An assist scenario is a simple exercise that allows you to understand what people are currently doing right now. Remember, your product is supposed to make a very painful thing easier to do. It's like, I am in Ghana, but I want to send money in Nigeria. In order to send money in Nigeria, I need to either you need to outline every single possible scenario that exists. Either you go to the bank and you do a wire transfer and they charge you a shit ton of money, and the person addresses it in 3 days, or you need to find a local money exchange person who will exchange for you at a really good rate. Sometimes you could fall into the wrong hands and you lose money. Or you paint every single freaking scenario that exists. That is the whole point of an assist scenario. You need to paint, if somebody wanted to send money in Nigeria, what would they do? How would they do it? Every single possible scenario is part of the assist scenario mapping. So you use the assist scenario as your team begins a new body of work to uncover what everybody in your team collectively knows or doesn't know. You can also use it when you need to make sense of the research, right? You write before you talk. Write it in a sticky note. There are no bad ideas. So do not say, oh, this is not possible. No, do not say this is a bad idea. Start big. Start with the craziest ideas and collect all of it. So this is what's currently happening. Make sure everybody participates and stays engaged, and you focus on the user. Oh, they have to travel. They have to go to 𝗵𝗁 to find somebody to send money, or they even have to give a driver they trust the money. No idea is crazy enough for the assist scenario mapping. You have to think about all the craziest details for what people would do to solve the problem you are looking at currently. And once you have that, you draw 4 big labels and you call them phases: doing, thinking, and feeling, right? So the general idea between these 4 phases is you think about the various steps. So when you've collected your assist scenario, let's say you did an exercise. We don't really have time. We could have done a lab or exercise. Let's say you have an exercise for, I want to send money from Nigeria to Ghana. So you have to break down the phases. When you've collected all the ideas, you can group them into a phase. And the phase is, first, you need to have the money, which is CDs, right? So the phase is, describing the goal or having the assets. And that phase can be, I have the CDs in cash. I have the CDs in mobile money. I have the CDs in my bank account, right? You describe the phase, right? So when you describe the phase, you have done the step 1. Now you need to describe what the user is doing, right? Thinking and feeling throughout their experience, and you fill in the corresponding roles, right? So when you have the phase, you say, okay, what are they doing? If they have the money in their wallets, they are checking their wallet accounts. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is they need to take that money, they need to send it to somebody. How do they get that money to the person who would perform the action? Let's assume they're giving it to a driver who is driving from Ghana to Nigeria to give the money. Let's assume they are going to meet a local currency exchanger. Or let's assume that they actually need to get it in a bank account. So what does that bank process? Are they going to do a wire transfer? Or does EcoBank or any other Pan-African bank allow you to deposit CDs and withdraw Naira? So what is the process like? If they're going to withdraw Naira, do they need a bank account of the individual, or do they need the phone number if it is a driver that is going to deliver the money, or do they need, the person's mobile number? What format is the money going to be? What format in Naira is the money going to be delivered in? And you fill in the corresponding roles. And if this is what they're doing, what are they thinking? So if they're going to give the money to a driver who's driving, are they worried? Are they thinking this person could be a scammer? Or they're going to find a local money exchanger? Are they also worried, like, this person could run away with my money? Are they feeling scared? Are they feeling uncertain? You map it all out here. You break them down into phases. When you've done it, you map it all out. And when you've mapped it, when you're done mapping, you cluster them into each category. This is phase 1. They have the money, but it's in a bank. They need to actually withdraw that money into cash. This is phase 2. They need to find the local money exchanger. They need to take the money from bank to an exchanger. This is phase 3, the waiting period. They don't know what is happening. The exchanger would need to tell them when the person receives money. They have to call their friend in Nigeria who will tell them whether they've gotten the money or not. And this is phase 5, which is, the final phase. Their friend received the money and is happy. What if the friend received the money late and it was an emergency and they started abusing them? So you kind of just need to map it all out. And when you're done mapping it, you circle and label areas that are particularly positive and areas that are particularly negative. And once you find the negative area, you can now present it. Your goal is to find the negative areas. Those are your vectors for impact. You see, your software is supposed to go into those negative areas and fix it, right? That's the whole point of the assist scenario mapping. Okay, they're always happy when somebody receives the money most of the time, but they're always scared in step 2 and 3, where they have to find a person who would exchange the money for them, or where they have to wait on the bank and fill like 3 to 4 forms before somebody gets money. And that is pretty much what an assist scenario is. Once you've done the assist scenario, usually you move straight into the empathy map. But an empathy map is usually focused on the user and not you. So you're going to just put yourself in the user's shoes, and you move straight into drawing a grid and label the 4 quadrants. And the 4 quadrants are say, think, does, and feel. You pretty much want to sketch the idea of your user and think about what they say whenever they are performing that action. You know, you just and it can be anything. Maybe they said this is nonsense. Maybe what did they do? Maybe they booked an Uber from their place to the local money exchanger. Or maybe they think that, you know, there has to be a better way. Maybe they feel sad, they feel scared. Your empathy map is a very important aspect of this. It allows you to soak yourself into your user's dilemma, into, you know, the different aspects of your user's influence, so you understand why this need is critical. And once you're done with the empathy map, the crazy important part is the need statement. Use the need statement to use this activity after research, and when you want to reframe your thinking to be more user-centered, and you ask yourself, what does our user really need? And the thing is, your need statements are only as reliable as the data you have from your assist scenario and your empathy map. So you need to frame the activity writing the following prompts. Our user, Raphael, needs a way to address need, send money from Ghana to Nigeria, so that they benefit in this way. So our user Raphael needs a way to send money from Ghana to Nigeria so that they can save time and money, or needs a way to send money from Ghana to Nigeria so that in a way that doesn't ensure, in a way they don't get scammed, they don't lose money, and they don't lose time, in a way that doesn't stress them, right? So your empathy map, if you already gone through the exercise, you realize that you already have the details and the information you need from your empathy map and assist scenario to frame a need statement. And when you diverge on the needs and benefits you believe you're solving, you stay away from writing features as much as possible. Now you have 4 problems you want to solve. At every given point, you can have someone on the team just present it back to you. You know, you try converge, you try writing a few need statements that represent the key elements, make sure you use the same format as the original prompt. At this point, you have a couple ideas. So let's say you go about it on 2 to 3 problem spaces. You already have like 3 really good ideas, because for each assist scenario mapping you do, you could actually have about 4 ideas. And, you know, by the time you're done with it, you already have about 12 ideas if you do the exercise like 3 times. And this is where the prioritization grid comes in. Usually before the prioritization grid, you usually need to synthesize the research and assumptions and questions. So you use the prioritization grid to break down a list of needs that you think are critical or are important to your stakeholders. So you evaluate possible ideas through the lens of user value, feasibility, which is critically important in a hackathon. It's like, can we build this within 2 days? Can we build this in 24 hours? Do we have the capacity to do this? Or business value to inform decision making. And business value in this section is the sponsor of the hackathon. So do you think this need this problem generates a lot of value for the sponsor of the hackathon, right? Most people, 1 second. So when you have this, once you have this, most people evaluate too soon and too often, and therefore create less. Create first, then use a prioritization grid to evaluate after, which goes back to the first point I made. There is no bad idea. There is no wrong idea, right? When you collect every single freaking idea you come up with, no matter how crazy, stupid it is, take it, write it down, just take it, write it down. And remember, the key is write before you talk. So just write it down. Write it down. When everybody is done writing, you present your notes and you put it and you share it, and then you prioritize. So what you want to do, your prioritization is only as valuable as the ideas you bring to the table. So make sure you have a strong set of ideas, sure. you put it in a prioritization grid. You want to look at it in a grid of low to high, which is importance to the user. How important is this problem to the user versus how feasible is it for the team to do it? And then you prioritize. So on the prioritization grid, you're evaluating your intrinsic capacity as a team to solve this problem versus the extrinsic ability or extrinsic external value of the idea itself on the users. And the sweet spot is usually somewhere here or somewhere here, where the value to the user is very high, and the feasibility for you is very low. But if it is low, you want to avoid those in your prioritization grid. You don't want to be like in this section. Nope. You ideally want to be somewhere here. High value to the user, but very low for you, right? Or somewhere mid where it's high, but decently complex for you to do, right? And once you have that, so once you have that, you then discuss with your team mates and position the sticky notes to figure out which of the ideas work, right? So once you have that, then you are pretty much in the good, and you can think of the ideas and you can pretty much proceed with exploring those ideas. And big bets, mid feasibility, high importance ideas that reflect significant investment with potential big payouts. And that is kind of like your prioritization grades, right? I will stop here because of time, but I just wanted to give you guys, this is pretty much like a fast track masterclass on how to generate ideas at scale for anything, even if you have no freaking idea who the customer is or any of your stakeholders yet. And we can essentially maybe move to quick QA. So we can do a quick QA based on design thinking before I run deep into the QA most of you had for prior to the conversation, because I do see a lot of interesting questions here that I think, are valuable to tackle. So essentially my version 1 of design thinking actually answers one of the questions. How do you even know if an idea is hackathon worthy, especially as a first time participating in the hackathon? Your empathy map, your prioritization grid, your assist scenario will tell you everything you need to know about the idea, everything you need to know as to whether this would be a good idea, it would be a great idea. Yeah.
Andrew, quick question. Maybe you can showcase each question that you read out, so we like on the screen, so we are able to follow. Yes.
Okay, sure. All right, one sec. Let me open that then. Share screen. I think Toolkit share. Please confirm if you can actually see my screen. I don't know what this is. Okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the questions that were asked. I believe I have it up and right.
Yes, I can see your screen, Terry. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. So how do you know if an idea is hackathon worthy, especially as a first timer? You really don't know. If you go through it from first principles, you will know. Essentially, if you have your assist scenario, you do your empathy map, and you've done the prioritization grid,
In
it
case
would be
you,
very,
Andrew, we can't hear you.
I see.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. So as I was saying, right, how do you know if your idea is hackathon worthy, especially as a first timer? You know because you've done the research, you have the answers. If you go through the design thinking process, you pretty much have the highest conviction ever about your idea because you did the research, you broke it down, you understand the user, you understand how valuable this idea is to the stakeholders. You've had a conversation with at least one or two sponsor users. So usually you can easily start this process 24 hours, 48 hours prior to the hackathon and start synthesizing on the various ideas that you need to explore. This way, when you show up at the hackathon, you probably have about 4 to 5 different ideas, and you can take a couple hours right there to gain conviction on which idea it is you're going to work on. What's a quick way to test if your idea makes sense before spending hours to build it? I'm glad I actually went through the process, literally. The prioritization grid would give you the answers. Once you've broken down the ideas and you've thought about it, you prioritize it based on the user's on the user's empathy map. You can tell which one is of high importance to the user and which one is feasible for you. Now, a really, really good idea that you cannot implement is watch less. A really, really good idea at this portion of the prioritization grade that you cannot execute is trash because you're going to end up spending hours working on an idea and you don't even have something to show for it, no matter how fancy it is. So you usually want to be somewhere at the sweet spot, which is at the center, right? You want your idea to be high value to your user and just mid-level technical or complex for your team members. That's what you want, right? So take note. High value, low feasibility, or mid-level feasibility is your sweet spot. It's like, oh, we're going to use AI to do, can you do that in 24, 48 hours? No, come back. Can you do that in 24, 48 hours? Yes, we have a craft engineer on our team. Go for it, right? It's all in the prioritization grid. Just take notes. Next is, should we aim for something totally new, or is it okay to remix existing? It's definitely okay to remix existing ideas. Because the thing is, if an idea exists in one chain, there is validated need for it. If an idea already works, it already validates the need. Your research has already been done halfway for you. So in your research process, you can incorporate the general notion of an idea in that problem space. It would be like working backwards to it. But if you do not understand why the idea exists, it will be hard for you to riff it. By riffing it is taking that same idea and making it into something new. It'll be hard for you to riff it because you don't even understand why that idea or product exists. Why did they build it? Who was the user they were targeting? If you don't understand that, it would be very hard for you to riff it backwards, right? But is it aim for something totally new? Aim for remixing ideas. But here is the catch. There is nothing new under the sun. Your idea can never be new. There is a version of your idea that exists somewhere in the spectrum in the world, somewhere. So do know that there is nothing new under the sun. However, the innovation behind your idea would always be new. There is no idea you pitch that has not been pitched before. But the catch is that the application of your insights, the application of the market's need, and the application of your technology makes your idea new. So don't think like you have the most novel idea. From years of experience evaluating several ideas, doing hackathons, judges, and also working in VC and accelerators, you'll see the same idea every year recycled, but for a different market, for a different trend, or for a different cycle of behaviors. The same idea there was a version of it for millennials. Now there's a version of it for Gen Z, etc., right? What's the biggest mistake people make when picking an idea? One of the biggest mistakes is actually not knowing what your team's strength is. You pick an idea and you do not have the capacity to build it. The worst mistake is actually picking an idea of low value and you don't have the capacity to even build it. So it's of low value to the user, but it is very complex technology and you do not have the capacity to execute it. So like I said, if you take everything from first principles, the answers will literally just be there for you, literally. Somehow I'm glad we actually just did a quick run through the design thinking before this. But yes, that's one of the worst case scenarios is you have this brilliant idea, but you don't even execute it because it's hard to do it within 24, 48 hours. So yes, big, great ideas, grand ideas, they're nice, but if you can't execute it, they are worthless. How do you scope an idea so it's actually doable in 48 to 72 hours? This one requires some level of product knowledge, right? Although, there are AI tools that could help you pitch ready as well, and all of that can help you scope your idea. But scoping your idea is where your expertise actually comes in. It's where you need the technical person on your team to come in, because I can't really answer that question for you if we don't know the idea. But usually, there are a few ways you can easily break down or scope an idea, right? First, you kind of want to start with the user outcome. What is our user going to do? What is it the user needs to do, right? That would make the product or the idea a success. When you answer that question, you then need to ask yourself, what are the components that would make it doable? If for this to be effective, can somebody give me an idea, maybe in the chat? Let's actually just break it down, right? So we can go over the thought process. Any ideas? Anybody wants to drop an idea in the chat?
Let's respond, dear hackers and builders. I don't want to call names, but let's kindly respond to Andrew. Any ideas? Okay, Andrew, someone just responded.
Parametric, for the sake of non-complexity, let's figure out what the meaning of parametric means. Now, I do not understand what a parametric insurance app for farmers means, to be understand. Yes. Okay, great. So a parametric insurance app for farmers to receive payments when the harvest is not up to expectation. So from a product perspective, what is the general outcome? Not enough rain, exactly. So you are solving a real world problem with technology. So you ask yourself, what does the product need to do? What data points do we need in order to solve this problem, right?
Alondra, I can't hear you that much.
So I'm saying the parametric idea, right? Your parametric insurance app performance, great. It means you want them to receive payments when the harvest is not up to expectation. You kind of need to break it down into the user outcome. How does the user report harvest that is not up to expectation? Number one, how do we evaluate that the harvest is up to expectation or not up to expectation? Number two, how do we decide on which farmers come to the platform? Number three, how do we decide on the algorithm for value definition? So how do we define the value for a harvest? Number four, these are your critical components. They could be more depending on the algorithm you're using, right? And so when you break it down, this is your scope. How long is it going to take you to deliver on each of these outcomes? How do we decide if a harvest is up to yield or not up to yield? What data points do we need? Do we need soil sample? How do we get it? Do we need information, topology information about the farm, where it's located? Is it warm enough? Is it hot enough? Do we need information about the crops? Do we need information about the seeds, right? That's how you scope. You define the outcomes, then you break them down into the hows. How do we achieve XYZ outcome, XYZ outcome, XYZ outcome? Once you've done breaking down the hows, you ask yourself, what data points do we need to achieve each of these outcomes, and who are the stakeholders? Is 48 hours going to be enough to even deliver on just one of this? If it does not look like it's enough, throw that idea away, push the new idea up to the stack, right? Literally, your goal is to be able to go through the process and have 10 ideas, and then you start prioritizing them based on feasibility and feasibility, essentially the capacity of your team and the value to your users. If I were to prioritize your idea on a hackathon level, I would say it's high value to the user and critically complex for the team as well, right? Like I said, in a hackathon, you want to be in the middle, the sweet spot at the center, where the idea is high value, but mid-level feasibility. Unless someone on the team is what you usually call a SWAT, somebody who is skilled with advanced tools, you feel like you have the most cracked developer on your team, then you put them off for the challenge, right? But weighing feasibility is very important, because if you don't understand the hows, if you do not understand the data points you need to make an idea, bring an idea to life, you would not deliver it within the hackathon. And if you could deliver one feature, if you had time for one feature, how do you decide which one matters the most? There's a matrix for this. It's called the high value, low effort matrix. High value, low effort matrix, right? The high value, low effort matrix is one of my favorite grades. You essentially are going to take ideas and say, which one would we put in the minimum effort possible? And, which one will drive the most impact? You usually want to be at the left-hand side of this grade. See, if it's high impact, high effort, is a major project. If it's high impact, low effort, it's a quick win. If it's low impact, nobody usually wants that, right? And then if it's low impact and high effort, nobody's going to thank you. But, nobody's going to thank you for it, right? So usually want to pick ideas that are within quick wins. High impact, low effort, right? And this is another version of it. High impact, low effort. You want to move from here to here. High impact, high efforts, and then move into here, which is low impact, low effort. A very easy example of visualizing low impact, high impact, low impact is, let's take an onboarding cycle, for example. If the user needs to log in, it's high impact and low effort, because they must be able to access the system with authentication. If the user needs to reset a password, those are usually things you call low effort, but low impact. You see, we like the idea of reset password, but we don't need it right now. So why don't we go to the next major high effort task that needs to happen? The core feature, right? So you always want to do the user is able to log in. Next, the user is able to onboard their farmland. Next, do you understand? Until you go to, we need to write an algorithm to define the actual versus targets, meaning what is the baseline for soil metric, crop metric, topology, etc., that we collect, and then define what our insurance yield, parametric insurance yield is for the user, and you move into like higher thoughts. How do we define fraud? How do we break down, things like fraud, cyber attacks, etc., to understand this is the real person, this is not a fraudulent person. We have data, KYC data, if that is required, or zero knowledge KYC here, right? So if you had to decide on which feature you want to do, you need to first of all start with high impact, low effort. And once you have that, you're good to go. I'm stepping on each other's toes. I'm not even going to. That is your business. Because hackathons are high pressure environments. I'm going to tell you, even if you like the person before the hackathon, you possibly will step on their toe while hacking because it is high pressure. So it's just very important for you to have empathy, but also understand why you're working on the project. If your whys are aligned, if your values are aligned, people would forgive each other when they step on their toes, but stepping on people's toes is inevitable. But just understanding why you're doing this, having a lot of empathy for your teammates, and try to be as diverse as possible. Like don't do an all boys team or an all girls team. You can do that, but diversity is usually the quickest hack to ensuring that people merge well together. So it kind of like just helps you overcome those barriers, right? To have empathy amongst yourself. When you have somebody else who is slightly different from you, thinks differently from you, but still challenges your thought process at the same time, allows you to come up with, refine your ideas and make it better, but also it cushions, the diversity helps you to kind of like, the various forms of diversity, but having a decently diverse team can help you manage pressure, especially as a team, stepping on tools, etc. What shortcut tools or hacks do you recommend for building fast? Just vibe code it, right? If you have an engineer on the team, vibe code it. Bolt, V0, Lovable, what, Cloud Code, Cursor, move, right? Get it done. Start with the quick wins, at least. Let the vibe coding help you do low effort, high impact stuff. Quick, so that in less than 6 hours, you already have your base, you extract the code, and you start working on the core feature, right? What makes judges lean in and pay attention during a pitch? Actually, your pitch is only as convincing as the problem it solves, right? If you do the empathy map, always start with the persona. Raphael needs to send money to his XYZ, but I find that the most exciting part of any pitch is outlining the assist scenario. Well, if Raphael needs to send money first, he needs to either find a local money exchanger or do this. One of the most important parts of a pitch is actually outlining this section. This is what Raphael is doing. This is how he's thinking about it, and this is what he's feeling. It usually captures their attention just before you tell them what your product does. I usually advise most founders as well as entrepreneurs and hackers, put your assist scenario before your solution. So that when you describe what Raphael used to do, right? When you've painted the picture of what his journey is like, everything he has to do, you then show them what your solution does to prevent Raphael from going through that thought process, that feeling, all of that work, right? And how do you explain a technical project without confusing non-technical judges? It's simple, focus on the user. Do not focus on the tech, focus on the user. That's how you do it. See, I can describe parametric insurance app for farmers a bit differently. like on the go. You said it's to receive payment when the harvest is not up to expectation. Hi, I want to tell you about 𝗵𝗶𝘆. She's a farmer. She's been planting mangoes for the past 7 years. Last year, when COVID hit, the world was in standstill. It meant 𝗵𝗶𝘆 could not get fertilizers for her mango products. And it was crazy because she usually orders this from Côte d'Ivoire into Ghana, but the borders were closed. An option would have been to import it from Cambodia or Asia, but she could not get any of this. So 𝗵𝗶𝘆 had to resort to developing her own mango fertilizers herself. But it's a struggle because, she has to figure out a scientist who can develop this produce, travel to the Cape Coast to find people who can break down the fertilizer materials for her before she can even get a seedling. And for the past 2 years, due to the lockdown, 𝗵𝗶𝘆's yield went down by 40%. And it was a struggle for 𝗵𝗶𝘆. But, we think there can be a better way. If 𝗵𝗶𝘆 was on para or parametric or whatever you call your app, let's call your app Insure. If 𝗵𝗶𝘆 was on Insure, she would not only have gotten credits line to push any of this business, but she would have been insured to cushion the losses from any loss she makes from her harvest, be it COVID-19, be it a drought, be it a virus, be it bad soil, or even in times of war. She would be able to get the same yield for her harvest. And we do this by XYZ, go into the technical freaking details, right? The algorithms, breakdowns, the reward asset permutations, blah, 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 blah. But they understand, yeah, this your parametric insurance app is going to make sure this lady who has a mango farm is able to still generate the yields from the farm, even if she makes a loss in a year. That's how you explain it to non-technical people. That focus on the users, right? And when you do that, you have a very quick hack to make your pitch more memorable. I literally just pitched you parametric insurance app for farmers in less than 1 second, less than 1 minute. And you can do that, right? Red flag you see in hackathon pitches, I'll skip it. And how do you make your project feel more relevant to Africa, the global Web3 space? Well, you solve problems that are close to you. It's pretty much the easiest way. Always the best ideas to work on are the ones either you have experienced or people around you have experienced that problem. If it's relevant to you, it's relevant to someone close to you, and it's relevant to people like you. That is just the reality. What's the best step? If your team really likes their hackathon project, what's the best next step after ETHAccra? I usually tell you hackathons are great for validating ideas. So the first thing you want to do is to win the hackathon. It's usually hard for a team to push an idea after the hackathon if they didn't win anything. The easiest, greatest, best validation you can get is winning the hackathon, because all you have to do is go to the grant program of whether it's Bays, Lakes, etc., and tell them, we want ETHAccra and we want to take this project into the market. After the hackathon, we made some improvements, and this is what we did. Can you give us the grants so that we can move forward, right? You get the grants, you now have a product, you now have users, about 1,000 users. You pitch to VCs, you pitch to investors, or you generate revenue for your business, right? So, but it's always easier to win the hackathon. So if your team really likes your project, win the hackathon first. Win the hackathon. If you can't even win the hackathon, you have zero validation to anybody outside who would give you 90 seconds of their time to prove to them that this idea is something worth pursuing, right? You need to, the hackathons give you this launch pad. It's an easy win launch pad that you can just take and be like, we won the hackathon, we now want to make this into a full product. Ecosystem guy, come support us. We move, bam, 2-3 weeks, you get on a call with head of ecosystem, you push it through, you get a grant, you put your head down, 6 weeks, you build something, you get customers, you have 1,000, you make that launch, you push it, you get the launch, you get it out, and you try to get people to use your products, raise funding if you must, generate revenue if you will, or figure out a valuable financing model that works for you or your team. And what's one lesson about winning or losing hackathons you wish more people knew? I told you the first lesson. Hackathons are great validation things. Like every single hackathon project I won, I took it and raised money for the product. I think maybe not all, but you know, I've won hackathons that even came with tickets to trips, you know, in various places. And you win hackathons that give you money. You win hackathons that give you access to like ecosystems that you would not have gotten access to, right? And losing hackathons is just part of the process. For every 5 yes no's, there is always 1 yes, right? And if you treat hackathons the way they are supposed to be, validating ideas, you just know, okay, maybe we need to fine tune our communication or we need to fine tune the tech, right? And you try again, but do not stop trying, right? Always put in your best, put in your heart, keep trying. And for every 3 to 5 no's, there would always be a yes. That's it for tonight. Thank you, guys.
Wow, like thank you so much, Andrew. Like yes, that's the energy, Selena. Let's give a round of applause for Andrew. Thank you so much. Even I learned a lot. Thank you so much. So quick one. If it is a question you have in mind that Andrew did not answer, thank you, David. Kindly ask now. Just unmute and ask in the next 1 minute. Thank you, Monica. Thank you for the clap for Andrew. So yes, if you know there's a question or there's a concern that Andrew has not addressed, kindly. Now is the time in the next 1 minute. Okay, so I'll take the silence as a no. Andrew has said a lot, and even some things that I didn't know, he has said it as well. So this recording will be available tomorrow, Wednesday. And yes, if you feel free to connect with Andrew on LinkedIn and Twitter, we usually tag him in our post. Feel free to connect him there. And if you've not registered for ETHAccra 2025, this is your cue, as I would always say on social media, to go register now. Apply to hack and see you in Accra. See you in ETHAccra 2025. Do have a wonderful evening, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye. Bye.
Bye.